Hello, it's CTO of the Theory Channel, and I'll give you a lot of money if Horace Slughorn is your favorite character in Harry Potter. I mean, he seems like a pretty creepy guy on the surface, and then you find out that he picked the most evil wizard of all time to be his favorite student. But to be fair, Slughorn couldn't predict the future of Tom Riddle, so he wasn't really a bad guy. Or was he? So as you can see, today I'll be discussing why Horace Slughorn could have been a Death Eater, but before I get any further into it, I'll quickly address what will be going on my channel for the next few weeks. I am going on a so-called Harry Potter Fest for the moment, and will be publishing at least 2 videos in the next couple weeks on the magical lore that it holds. I also might release my first Easter egg video in the coming month of June, which also could be on Harry Potter. But back to the man of the hour, Professor Slughorn. With the Super Carlin brothers recently making a theory on Slughorn's involvement with the love potion and Mara Begaunt, Tom Riddle's mother, I started to look into Slughorn's life even more, since we really don't know too much about him. What we do know is that Slughorn was born sometime between 1881 and 1914, from a pureblood Slytherin family. He attended Hogwarts at age 11 and was easily sorted into Slytherin House. Then, after leaving Hogwarts, he came back to teach and held the position of Potions Master for about 50 years. In the meantime, Slughorn teaches one of his favorite students, Tom Riddle, about Horcruxes in the year of 1944. When Riddle becomes Lord Voldemort and rises to power in around 1950, Slughorn becomes ashamed of himself for what he had done. When Voldemort supposedly died in 1981, Slughorn was even happier than most, which rose suspicion in the eyes of one of his closest friends and boss, Albus Dumbledore. And so, Slughorn quit teaching in 1981. He retired and spent most of his later life on the move between various Muggle homes and staying on guard for Death Eaters until Dumbledore and Harry Potter recruited him to teach potions once again in 1996. And I guess you could say that the rest is history. So not a great life, but not an awful life, I suppose. Unless Slughorn was hiding something huge, even more huge than his relations with Mara Begaunt. What if Slughorn had been a Death Eater? I mean, the possibility itself isn't that crazy, because as we know, Slughorn was very fond of Tom Riddle. And even the way the Harry Potter Wiki and Pottermore describe Slughorn's early life and personality sounds strikingly similar to Riddle's. A Slytherin boy that only liked purebloods, charmed teachers, became head boy, and came back to Hogwarts to teach there. The only real difference is that Riddle turned completely evil and became the most powerful dark wizard of all time, while Slughorn was off being an armchair. What always bothered me about my favorite Harry Potter book, the 6th, was that Slughorn was so ashamed at himself for giving Voldemort the information on Horcruxes, and I really didn't get why. I mean, it's not like Slughorn is the only wizard in the world to know about Horcruxes. Well, I couldn't get it from my 50-year-old potions teacher, so now I can't be the most dangerous wizard of all time. But seriously, there must be tons of powerful wizards who know about Horcruxes, not to mention books on the subject that aren't in the restricted section of the library. And it's pretty clear that Riddle already had a good grasp on the subject when he went to ask Slughorn about it, and he was really just wanting confirmation. So Slughorn shouldn't be that ashamed at himself, since Riddle would have found out about the subject one way or another. But then, why is he? Because Horace Eugene Slughorn was once a Death Eater. As I said earlier, Slughorn always admired Tom Riddle, and was even a lot like him in his childhood, so it would make perfect sense for him to be one of Riddle's followers. When Voldemort rose to power in the 1960s, Slughorn started to become attracted to the idea of becoming a Death Eater, and he eventually does so in around the late 70s. And absolutely no one knows about this, except a few other Death Eaters, and of course, Voldemort himself. Not even Dumbledore, supposedly one of his most trusted friends, knows Slughorn's true identity. And when Voldemort basically dies in 1981, Slughorn stops teaching, which was supposed to be because Dumbledore was getting suspicious that he was hiding something, which he was, the fact that he told Voldemort about Horcruxes. But in this theory, Slughorn quits for the same reason, but he thinks that Dumbledore suspects him for being a Death Eater, not for teaching Voldemort. During the time that Voldemort was in hiding, Slughorn eventually feels bad for betraying Dumbledore, and starts realizing how evil Tom Riddle and himself had become. So even when Voldemort comes back to power, Slughorn doesn't return to him. And when Death Eaters constantly try to draw him in, that's not because they're trying to recruit him, it's because they're trying to bring him back to his old master. But not even Dumbledore knows about this, as it is Slughorn's darkest secret. But I suppose you could ask, if Slughorn was a Death Eater, then why doesn't Snape tell Dumbledore? Because Snape is literally passing along any information he can get from Voldemort and his Death Eaters directly to Dumbledore. It's because Slughorn stopped following Voldemort just before Snape joined, in 1981. All of this would explain everything. Slughorn's reluctance to teach at Hogwarts again, his unwillingness to share the memory with Harry, and why he's such a gloomy person in general. The sadness that is in him when handing Harry the memory is too much for just teaching Riddle about Horcruxes. Slughorn had to be involved in something deeper and darker than that. Just take a look at Slughorn in the scene.
I know why you're here. But I can't help you. It would ruin me.
It would ruin me. It's as if the end of the world is coming for Horace Slughorn, even though all he did was leak minor information about Horcruxes. No. What he really did was become so obsessed with his student that when they became a powerful evil lord, his loyalty never wavered. Kind of cowardly, which reminds me of another character here. Snape and Slughorn are very similar in the way that they both joined Voldemort and then stopped following him when the Dark Lord disappeared. The only difference is that Snape spends the rest of his life being a spy and is loyal to Dumbledore, while Slughorn runs away from Death Eaters and, again, is being an armchair. So it's pretty ironic how Harry calls Snape a coward in The Half-Blood Prince, which is the same book that Slughorn was introduced in. And Slughorn is almost like a cross between Snape and Wormtail, as he is a Slytherin coward mixing between loyalties who turns good at the end. But if you're not sold at that, then there is one more thing. Slughorn was extremely attracted to Tom Riddle, but he also had a second favorite student later in his teaching career, at the time when he had already started to become a Death Eater. That student was Lily Potter. And so it would make perfect sense for killing Lily to be the last straw for Slughorn, as he stopped being a Death Eater after that event occurred. Seeing his favorite student and his master murder another one of his favorite students was too much for him to bear, and his loyalties shifted. But with all this negativity about Slughorn, it's also important to remember that he did help in the Battle of Hogwarts, and he eventually gave Harry the memory that he needed. So I guess he's more of a Death Eater turned good, like Snape, but just less heroic. And Slughorn is also cunning and strategic, as he successfully fooled Dumbledore, as Dumbledore put his full trust in him. The people of Hogwarts had no idea that they were employing a former Death Eater. So I think I've wrapped up this theory pretty tightly now, but as I said earlier, expect more Harry Potter out of me soon. A Felix Felicis video is in the works, as is one about Voldemort's Patronus. So subscribe, comment, and until then, see ya.